tons and tons of SAP money into the Fort Worth chapter through his SAP partnerships. But what you may not know, he has helped over 300 Fortune 500 companies just explode in their sales. And I'm really excited to have him here. Thanks everybody for coming. Wait.
Thanks, man.
One more thing. Y'all messed up letting the non-alcohol drinking guy charge your party, so you will be sober until at least 6:30.
So Emily told me no drinks until I'm done. And I was like, that will make me a pretty unpopular guy. But that's not me, that's the boss. So thank you so much for having me today. I'll tell you my favorite COVID story is I have a niece who lives in Edmond, I think, and she's getting married March 14th, 6 months ago. And so my wife and I, we drive up for Gabby's wedding, beautiful wedding. And I'm like, my buddy John Harrington lives somewhere around here. And so John and I serve on the regional council together. He does a lot of work. I'm just there for comic relief. And so I call, or I think I text you and say, oh, by the way, I'm in Edmond. And he's like, well, you must come by our house. And I'm like, dude, it's like Saturday night at 7:30, no notice. And he's like, no, you must come by our house. And so we go by, and John and Chrissy wine and dine us, and we just have a ball. And so I've lived here 2 different times, been run off both times. And so if you're here, you're obviously way ahead of me, and we'll see if this works. And we're broke. So my name's John Williams. I'm from EO Fort Worth. I do a lot of speaking for EO, and typically on sales. And so that's the good news. And I've helped a lot of Fortune 500 companies do a lot of business. But an interesting thing, this last week, I was trying to refine some marketing. And so I sent out a survey to about 150 EOers who know me well. And I said, hey, tell me what you think my number 1 skill is. Guess what? It wasn't sales. And I was like, something about that feedback thing. And so leadership is number 1, and communication and customer experience were number 2. Sales was number 3. So interesting. So if you want to see yourself the way other people see you, ask and do it in an anonymous manner where they can tell you and they know that you don't know what they said. So I thought, and we're going to see if this is going to work. And it's not going to work. Emily, you're the clicker.
Got it.
Okay, and so I thought we were going to have some prospects, so we're going to talk about EO, but forget EO. And so today we're going to talk about how to, that'll be between us, right? That'll never make it back to the regional council. I'm applying for other paths of leadership. It'd be best if everybody didn't hear that. So today we're going to talk about, I was like, is it Mr. Sales? And she was like, no, Master Sales. So I'm like, okay, I'll try and do that. So today, the first thing we're going to talk about, and both Matt and Emily, their charge to me was, we want people to walk out with real tangible things they can do starting tomorrow to win more business. And I'm like, I love that. And so I did a version of this in Tulsa in September for their SAPs. And they only have 3 or 4 SAP. They have 3 or 4 SAPs, not only. They have 3 or 4 SAPs. And so that's like a 2.5-hour workshop. And so I know she's got me down for 45 minutes, but I'm really going to do 2.5. No, I'm not. But later that night, one of those SAPs sent me a LinkedIn message and said, hey, you remember where you shared that thing on that one slide? I've got a proposal in front of a bank. It was dead. They ghosted me for over a month, couldn't get any response. I took the things I learned on that slide, sent them a text, and at 5 o'clock today, I had my signed master services agreement and contract. And I was like, woohoo, good, thanks for sharing. Guys like me like to hear about the wins, because when you live in sales, you don't always win. And so I was like, so what was that deal worth? And he said, well, we bill $40,000 to $60,000 a month. And so just call it $500,000 a year. And I was like, not too shabby. So we'll see if we can get some of that. So we're going to start out with wow. So Everybody's done, yeah, thank you. Everybody's done customer satisfaction index, net promoter, and all that stuff. I'm gonna steal your wow, okay? So if you really wanna rock and roll your sales effort, I think here's where you have to start. And you have to say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, the experience that we want to deliver to our prospects and to our customers is 11. Which is where wow starts, and it goes on to infinity. And it's not that hard to do, but it's really hard to do if you don't start with that, okay? And so when we get done, I'll ask you if you give me a wow, and Emily will send you a survey, and we'll do all that. And to begin with, let's just start. If you'd hold your wow, everybody turn around and look at Emily and give a big smile like you're having a big time. Okay, and she's going to take a picture, and yes, we're going to post it. EO, Oklahoma City, everybody got their wow. And if you turn it upside down, it'll be mom, and that's okay too. And she's taking a couple pictures. And so let me give you a good example of wow. So a couple of years ago, we're headed to Bangkok for GLC. Okay, anybody go GLC in Bangkok? Awesome, okay, unbelievable time. My redhead tells me, look, I'm going to book the tickets. I'm like, fine, no problem. And so when I come home that night, she says, I booked the tickets, and when we fly out, they're going to send a car to pick us up. Now, I fly a bunch. Well, pre-COVID, I fly a lot. I have a lot of miles with American, live in Dallas, Fort Worth. But she tells me they're going to send a car to pick us up. I'm like, you read it wrong, you heard it wrong. They're not. And she's like, yeah, they are. I know better than to argue with her. I mean, she's going to be right, but it didn't sound right, okay? Well, the day that we're gonna fly out, there's a knock at the door, large man in a black suit, black tie, white shirt, black Escalade. He picks us up in the luggage and takes us to the airport. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. Included in the price of the ticket, okay? And we're flying business, we're not flying first. So we get to the airport, he takes the baggage. I packed in a lunch bag, she's not. We're gonna be gone for a couple of weeks. And so when we get on the plane, before I even sit down, the flight attendant comes up and says, Mr. Williams, and I still don't know how she did that, how she knew my name before I sat down. She says, would you like to see a wine list? Well, I'm kind of a smart aleck. I'm like, and I fly American, so on American you got 2 whites, 2 reds, and they're out of 1 of each, so really your only choice is red or white, right? Well, she has a wine list, and like a wine list. I'm like, I'll have the 2004 Bordeaux, please. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And so we sit down, we take off, we're flying, we're gonna be in the air 16 hours on this leg. And so she's telling us when they're gonna feed us, and she's like, but we cook to order, and so if you want to eat before that or after that, you just let me know. I'm like, wow, this is not American Airlines, okay? We get over the Atlantic, they're dimming the lights, and she comes by and says, would you like a mattress? And I'm like, well, yes, if you have a mattress, I'd like a mattress. And so she shows up with a memory foam mattress, and I'm one of those weird people who I buy my clothes based on how they feel. Okay, I have this thing about fabrics, I don't know where I got that, but I just do. And so, and it's got like 1,200 thread count sheets, and so I'm wowed over the mattress and the sheets. And so we get to Dubai. So Dubai is the busiest airport in the world, 90,000 passengers a day in and out. You got to clear customs. I'm not looking forward to that. But we have like that, you know how you go to Disney World and you get the fast pass and you skip the long line and you go to the front? We have a fast pass at the Dubai airport. And so we walk past this ocean of people and go through customs like, wow, this is unbelievable. Every bad experience I've ever had on an airplane is almost erased by what they've done. You get to Bangkok in the middle of the night, you're not even sure what night, you've been flying so long, but there's a driver there and he picks you up and he takes you to your hotel. And so that is a wow experience. And if you really want to drive sales, it has to be a goal that you're going to knock people's socks off. Not that we're going to do 5% better, 8% better, 12% better, but that you're going to knock their socks off. And so our grand rules for today are this. Speak when you want to. If you have a question, ask. Please be present. Trust the process. It will seem nonsensical until we get to the end and the light will appear, okay? And does everybody know about otter? So I'm gonna give you some stuff that you can use right away. So Otter is an app, and if you want to use it today, we are recording, and we'll provide this back to the chapter, we'll edit and do all that stuff. But if you want to record, there's an app called Otter.ai. It's the grand price of free, okay? And you can put it on your phone, and you can audio record anybody, anywhere. And the cool thing about it is this: as it's recording, it's auto-transcribing. And so you're getting text, and I'll talk about writing books that way, because that's what I do. I'm not a writer, I am a talker. So if you want to use Otter, fine. And could we go on, Miss Emily? So here's a challenge for today. So, guys speak, and I'm fortunate to get to, and when the pandemic's over, I'm going to go back on the road 90 days a year. But, they always stand in front of their cars. Okay, this is not my car, okay? But the challenge for you today is this. I don't even think this Ferrari has a traditional rear view mirror hanging on the windshield, okay? I think you're just with the outside rear views. But the rear view mirror is about this big, and the windshield's about that big. And so the challenge today is this. Put what you know about sales and think about sales in the rear view, in the small, and look at where you want to go, okay? And so let's look forward, not where we've been. And I'm going to try and load your toolbox today. So, and I put this presentation together yesterday, so if you don't advance, I won't know where we're going. Okay, good. So, and that is my custom. So I do this a lot in EO, typically with SAPs, teaching and training them how to sell appropriately within EO. And we did a little bit of that this afternoon with Brian and Susan, the SAP chair. So my parents are the first generation off of North Dakota and northern Oklahoma and southern Kansas wheat farms. And so my first job, where I come from, is I was driving an LP John Deere tractor at wheat harvest. So the combines are in the field, and then about an hour later, I'm entering in the field. And that was my first job, and I was 11 years old. And so different world. I learned two things that day. I learned what hard work was, and I knew I did not want to be a farmer as I went forward. Love being outside, don't love that. At 19, I was in Wichita. I became in less than a year on the job, I became top salesman in the country out of 450 salespeople. They made the big mistake of taking the best salesman and promoting him or her to the manager. Okay, it worked out in my case. It took me about 6 months to be the top sales manager out of 45 stores. But most of the times that doesn't work out, so you want to think about that. There's a tip there. Your great salesperson maybe is best as a great salesperson, and a great manager has a different set of skills. And I was the kind of manager who not only got the most dollars and the most sales, but would promote another sales manager about once a quarter. And so, you'll know you're good managers if they're replicating themselves, because can you really be a good leader if you're not helping build other leaders? And the answer to that's probably no. So I was selling new homes in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Broken Arrow. And I can remember a realtor coming in, and they had a little medallion, and I'm 60, so this was 80 something. And a realtor comes in, they had a little medallion on their jacket. I'm like, what is that? And they're like, $1 million round table. I sold $1 million worth of homes last year. Now today that's a deal, okay? But back then, that was a big deal. And I was like, man, that's great. I sold 17 last month. I got that last month. But started my first, I'm kind of a smart aleck too. So started my first company at 26. I've been in the contact center business since that time, worked with over 300 of the Fortune 500. If I don't time out, maybe I'll get to all 500. We'll have to see. And so, is sales science, art, or both? What do you think? It's both, yeah. We got to have the scientific part. We got to count numbers. We got to have a process, okay? But the real beauty happens on the art. And so today we'll deal with both sides, the science and the art. And so I wrote that book, Romancing Your Customer, and Bill and I were talking about writing, and he just finished a book, and man, that's rare air. Congratulations. Very few people write a book. When I wrote the romancing book, I kind of see business from the romantic journey. So I'm 60 years old. I was born in Wichita, Kansas. I have a certain, that kind of frames my viewpoint on how I see romance. Romance takes a lot of different forms today, but that gives you an idea of where I come from. And so, dating and courting is very parallel to marketing and selling. Very similar, okay? And when you stand at the altar and say, I do, and you may kiss the bride, that's about the same thing as closing the sale, okay? And you enter into a different kind of relationship. You should bring some of that romance, okay, with you, and then it goes on to your team. That's your culture is kind of like the love in your family, and then of course the hardest part to deliver the romance and leadership is with yourself. So let's talk about more dates. This is the science part. So who in the room has plenty of leads? Okay, come on now, really. Somebody's got a consistent stream of qualified leads. We got all we want. Matt, you do, okay. John, okay, good. Okay, so let's talk about more dates. So, I'll use you, okay? I've known Brian for a couple years. We were flying back from some EO thing somewhere in some airport sometime, okay?
Right.
And we've seen each other along the EO path, okay? So you're in landscaping and lawn service, okay? So, here's like the first question on more dates. Who do you want to date? So who is your best customer?
Business owners, high-end execs, $500,000 and up homes.
So a business owner, high-end exec, but for their residential property.
From the residential side, yeah.
On the residential side. Do you do commercial also?
Yes.
Okay. But the residential is your best customer.
Probably most profitable, yes.
Okay. Okay, good. So,
or a GC that doesn't have that much paperwork every side.
yeah. Okay. So how many of those either entrepreneurs or business owners or execs that have $500,000 and up homes, what's your service area?
North Oklahoma City, Edmond.
North Oklahoma City, Edmond. We don't like South Oklahoma City? What's the problem?
Drive time.
Okay.
Plus on the south side, they're more better trailer patio.
I do, remember I lived here before, and I do remember there's this thing about North Oklahoma City and South Oklahoma City. Me not being from here, I don't understand it, but I do live in Fort Worth, and we have a suburb about 30 miles or minutes east of us called Dallas, and they got the same thing going on. And I'm not from there either, and I still don't get it, but there's a thing. Okay, so I get it. All right, so in your service area, how many of those homeowners exist? But do you know how many?
I don't.
Okay, so tip one, find out how many are your prospects, okay? You can make a note. There's a company called, and I have nothing to do with this, there's the largest list broker in the US is a company called AccuData. They're out of Fort Myers, Florida. You can go to acculeads.com, which is their online portal. You can set up an account for nothing, and you can research. You can say how many owner-occupied $500,000 homes are within a radius of this point or within this polygon, within whatever geography you want, and in about 5 seconds it'll tell you, okay? And then you'll have your market defined for maybe the first time, okay, which is kind of where you start. It's like if I want to build sales, who do I want to sell and how many of them are out there? And most companies, when you do that the first time, they're like, oh, we have tons. And I'm like, I assure you, your tons is a lot smaller than you think, okay? In my contact center, a company might call and say, I have a big list to call. I'm like, how many people do you have to call? And they're like, 5,000. And I'm like, we'll do 150,000 phone calls a day. We're going to do that before coffee break. okay? And so, it's a matter of scale, but the first piece in more dates in the system is find out how many people are out there. Now, depending on your business, it might not be, maybe you need to go to Facebook, or maybe you need to go to LinkedIn, and maybe your marketing is more digital in nature, and so you need to see, so we market to attorneys in our contact center business, and I don't know what the number is, but we know what the number is. We know how many attorneys are on LinkedIn. Okay, and we know how many attorneys exist, and we know when you merge the two together, what's the sweet spot for us, and that's the only people we reach out to, okay? But step one is define your market, okay? So AccuLeads.com, you can do that all by yourself, or you can go to AccuData.com and call them. So the next step, once we know who we're gonna sell, what would the next step be? Pardon?
Find who the decision makers are.
Find who, yeah, and so we know, in his case, we know who it is. We know the property owner.
Oh, you meant for him.
Well, I'm just using him as an example, okay? If you're B2B, it may be a certain title, okay, in that company, but we're gonna define who that is, and that kind of falls within defining our market. But then how are we gonna reach out to them? So how do you reach out to prospects?
Social media, word of mouth, referrals.
God, I love word of mouth and referral.
It's free.
It is free and it's the best, but it's almost like accidental business. When's the last time you drove sales up 25% next month on referral? Probably didn't happen, okay? And even a lot of social, it depends. So social, if you're doing unpaid posts, that's, and I love unpaid, I love free. Free's good, okay? But, I'm not really driving business. And it's in your purview. You can drive business. You just got to figure out how you're going to reach out. Are you going to go knock on, there's only so many ways to do it. I can go knock on your door. I probably can't call you because of do not call, okay? I can do direct mail. I could go door to door. I could have my crew that mowed next door go, come in, we were waiting on you. I could have my crew do that.
We have some door hangers, we do that.
You do a door hanger, good.
Not during COVID, but yes.
Okay. The door's probably safe, I'm just saying, as a salesperson, if you're really gonna drive business, if somebody doesn't complain about your marketing activity sometime, you know what the answer is? You're not selling hard enough. Somebody should say, too much, back up. And then you say the magic words in selling, what forgives everything? I'm so sorry. And in America, everybody will forgive you and you can go right on about your business. Okay, so then we got to figure out how we're going to reach out to them. And so maybe it's face-to-face, maybe it's the phone, maybe it's direct mail, maybe it's email, maybe it's social media, maybe it's paid posts, maybe it's Google ads. There's only about 40 different ways you can reach out to people before you get to telepathy. And I've tried telepathy for a long time. It doesn't work very well. It's hard to get them to pick it up. But then you figure that piece out, and then you act, okay? So most of my clients who retain me on a sales, hey, let's grow our sales, when I ask them the question, and I won't put you on the spot, but when I ask you the question, what is your marketing budget as a percentage of top line? I get this blank look. And I'm like, I think that means you don't have one. They're like, well, I do. I have money for it. I'm like, so, but what's the budget and what are you working with every month? And they're not. And so, you're not getting great results if you're not taking great effort. And guess what? It won't all work, okay? And then what we have to do is we got to count numbers, okay? So we reach out to this many people waved their hand and said, I could be a prospect. We followed up with this many people, okay? And so I had a meeting today at lunch, thank you, Emily, and she introduced me to somebody who maybe I could help, and not an EO member. And I had a great conversation with this lady about 8 weeks ago, and the kind of conversation that ended in, hey, send me a proposal. And I'm like, happy to. I have two questions. One, does that mean you have budget? And two, when would you start if all the lights were green? Because if I don't get answers to those questions, I'm not doing a proposal. Okay, I'll send you an email and say, this is what it's going to cost. But I'm not putting zero time if you can't answer those two questions. Okay, she had an answer, sent a proposal. Okay, now this is confidential, Emily. Okay, so I've had 5 unanswered emails. Okay, but my feelings are not hurt. I'm not angry. Okay, and last night, and my last email was like, hey, I'm coming to Oklahoma City. I could meet you that day. If you want to meet in person, and I'm a lot more impressive in person, just ask John. I mean, he and I work together, okay? But we could. And so last night, about 7 o'clock, she says, hey, are you still available? And I'm like, I can be. And she's like, would you meet for lunch? And I'm like, I'd love to. And so I went to Barrios, great place. Fish tacos were killer and had some kick. I mean, Oklahoma City's changed a lot since I lived here, like a lot. And we have a follow-up conversation tomorrow, and I can't promise she buys, but I would just say at this point in the game, we're about 95% she does. Okay, so if your salespeople or you get discouraged as you're working your process when you reach out and you hear nothing, and 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 you reach out and hear nothing, you know what you're supposed to do? Reach out again. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. Don't take it personal, okay? And people will only buy when they're ready to buy. Here's the one thing this was my disclaimer. I don't know how to make people buy. I know how to make it easy for people to buy, okay? And here's why you ought to do that. You know who your number one competitor, I don't even know what industry you're in. I know John, I know Brian, I think I know you. Your number one competitor is a company called Amazon. And you might be like, it's not. What do you do?
App development.
Real estate, app development.
Yeah.
App development, okay. Amazon is still your number one competitor. And here's why. When I want something from Amazon, when do I want it? I wanted it 1 second before I asked Amazon, before I opened my browser, okay? I'm like, I want this. And so then I had to open my browser, and I'm a little irritated by having to do that. I have to type it in the search bar, and I'm a little more irritated. They take a whole quarter of a second to give me 200,000 choices, and one that they recommend. Here's Amazon's Choice. How many times you buy Amazon's Choice? I do almost every flipping time. And with one click, it shows up 2 days later on my doorstep. It's the most frictionless buying experience ever in the history of mankind. If you want to do more business, if you want to make more sales, be like Amazon. Be frictionless, okay? If your process is loaded with friction, every bump they hit, you lose some of your potential buyers, okay? If your goal is to deliver wow and to do it in as frictionless manner as possible, you'll win a lot of deals. So I got to count, okay, my numbers, and then I got to hold my, you have salespeople? Okay. What do I got to do with my salespeople? I got to hold them accountable. Here's the number, okay? I don't expect you to sell every one of them. I mean, I don't walk on water either, okay? But what I do expect is this. You close them or you kill them, one or the other. I just don't want to be left in the valley of unknowing, okay? I hate waiting because, when you're waiting, I never know if I'm in the beginning of the wait or the middle of the wait or the end of the wait or in the eternal wait. They've forgotten me, okay? And your customers are the same way, okay? So that's on the science side, and she only gave me an hour, okay, for about 2 weeks of stuff, so I'm gonna move on, but I can talk more about that, and I'm happy to answer a question anytime for anybody. Okay, doesn't matter, reach out to me anytime. And so now let's talk about better dates. Okay, so once we have more dates, we gotta be better. Here's the number one thing that most of my clients are horrible at, and I won't put anybody on the spot, but they get a lead, okay? And as a business owner, you know that lead costs money. It took effort, okay? It's valuable. They get a lead, it goes to the sales team, or maybe even to them. And when do they reach out to the lead? Sometime. And when should they reach out to the lead? Now. Yeah. So, on following up on leads, most people, if you were looking to buy a swimming pool, you'd probably reach out to 3 pool contractors. That'd be a normal thing to do. I mean, you get 3 bids, okay? The reality is that you have a 70% chance of buying from the first contractor you talk to. Not the first contractor that emails you, not the first contractor you get an autoresponder from, but a 70% chance of buying from the first person you speak with. Not the first one you ask to speak with, the first one you actually talk to. So if you want to win those leads, if you want to beat your competition, because your competition's probably not doing it, you got to follow up real time, okay? And so here's a good example. So it's Medicare time. Anybody got Medicare in your family? But they're getting pummeled with open enrollment. And so there's a bunch of lead companies that kind of, on the internet, they look like insurance companies, but they're really not. You put in your information and they sell that information to 4 insurance companies, okay, because it's a way for them to maximize their dollars, and those companies follow up with that lead. Okay, so what you know in that business is this: if you're buying those leads, you for sure have three competitors, 3 people that say they're going to follow up. They don't all, okay? But if you want to win that game, you call the lead back within 60 seconds and you stay on the phone as long as you can, okay? Because if you're going to get 4 phone calls and I keep you on the phone 45 minutes, what are you going to do about the other 3 phone calls? Oh, I can't talk. I can't talk. But I talked to Brian, and so I'm buying from Brian. I'm not talking to anybody else. But time is your friend or your enemy, okay? And so leads are like fresh bread. It's really good. Day old, not so good. Week old, you might as well just burn it, okay? You missed it. When somebody's doing a Google search and they're looking for something, think back to Amazon, okay? They want it right then. Even, so I'm not a clicker. I will never do a form submission. I will never send an email. I'll pick up the phone and call. I quit calling once I get someone who gives me the answer that I kind of expect to get and who talks to me. I'm done calling. But if I don't get the answer I expect or somebody doesn't answer, what do? I call the next one. I call the next one. And your prospects are doing the same thing. Either you're talking to them immediately or they're going on to your competition and they're going to buy. The stats say 70% odds they're going to buy from the first person they talk to. So just like with my redhead, when she tells me she wants something, she doesn't really tell me I want something next year, next month, okay? And so you want to be a better dater, give people what they want, when they want it, how they want it. Lost my clicker. That's all right. We got 4 clickers and none of them work. So here's a hack. How many of you are B2B? Okay. Take your phone. Okay. Open LinkedIn real quick. And speakers hate for you to take your phone. Okay. Pull your phone out. Pull your phone out. Open LinkedIn. In the top bar on LinkedIn, on the right, you'll see 4 squares. Okay, and this is really going to work good for you B2B people. Okay, in the 4 squares, tap that and it'll say get your code or scan a code or something like that. Okay, so this is my code, this is my QR code that LinkedIn generates for me. If you scan my code, we'll be able to connect on LinkedIn, and in the matter of 60 seconds, I will have connected with a dozen people in this room. And if you're B2B and you're at a trade show, you're in a room like this, hard to believe. I'm going to give everybody a business card today. I may be the last man in America who buys business cards. I'm at a session not too long ago, and there's two guys that are like 30, and they're like, business cards, are you old or what? And I'm like, okay, I'm old, but are you telling me you don't have a business card? And they're like, no way I don't have a business card. I'm like, so let me ask you this. You're in an elevator with the best prospect you ever saw, and it's an old guy like me. And I say, give me your business card. What do you say? And they're like, we don't have business cards, we're millennials. You know what? You lost me forever. Because I asked you for something, and you did what?
I said no.
You didn't give it to me. Yeah. You want to win prospects? Give them what they want, when they want, how they want it. Okay? So B2B, use that, and can we go on? Hack 2, I didn't bring it. So when I went to Bangkok to GLC, I sat in on a presentation given by a lady by the name of Gina Mollicone Long. Does anybody know Gina? She'd be a great person to come to Oklahoma City. She'll charge you a lot more than I did. She gave a talk. She's an electrical engineer by trade, okay? She gave a talk about the relationship of electricity between your brain and your body. And your brain controls your body with electrical impulses, and about 75% of the traffic starts in the brain, and 25% starts in the rest of the body and goes to the brain, except with the heart. And with the heart, 75% of the electrical impulse traffic starts in the heart and goes to the brain, and 25%, which is the only part of your body that works like that. And that biorhythmically, you perform at your absolute highest mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, when you express or experience gratitude. And you, at your very worst, when you express or experience shame. Okay? And if anybody is struggling with shame, please reach out to me privately, and I'll help you find somebody to get that monkey off your back, because that's a horrible thing. So I never really lost at anything until I was 40. Everything I touched, I was kind of Midas. Everything I did, it worked, and it worked well, and I expected it to work. And at 40, my marriage fell apart. And man, I was not prepared. And so I was a single dad for a long time. I had custody of my boys. Dark time. But it was the first time I'd really ever lost anything. And so when I listened to Gina, I was like, you know, I've been really blessed my whole life, but I've just never been that grateful for it. I expected it, and I got it. And kind of like the entrepreneur, you know, we hit that big number, and I look at that number, and I'm like, hey, that's great, but what about this over here? You ever done that? So that was kind of me. So I came home, and I was like, I'm going to be more grateful. And so I went to Home Depot, and I bought a little bucket, little galvanized bucket, and I took a card and I wrote the word gratitude on it. And I began to carry that bucket with me everywhere I went. Sat in my truck, not in the Ferrari, sat in my truck, sat in the den, sat on my credenza. If you've ever seen any of my videos, it's always behind me in the video on my credenza. And what I found is that as I began to focus on gratitude, you know, I went from flipping people off that cut me off on the highway to just saying, I'm grateful. And because as you practice gratitude, you'll become more grateful. So I've been doing that for about, I don't know, maybe a year, and I decided I'm going to share this intentional daily practice of gratitude with my leadership team. So I have 9 people on my leadership team, and every Monday morning we have a meeting we call One Good Thing. And if we ever have a workshop, or you know, we're not just speaking, I generally start with one good thing, and it's where everybody stands up and spends 60 seconds and tells one thing they're grateful for in their business, family, or personal life that we don't know. And as we're doing this over a period of time, I see my leadership team becoming more grateful. They have to be a little careful with it, because you can see their self-images elevating. And I've lost 2 world-class people who went on to something else. But you know, you got to ask yourself, do I want to be the kind of leader who I'm going to hold you down to keep you here, or do I want to be the kind of leader who's going to help you go and find your path? So I'd been traveling for a week, and a lady who'd worked for me probably 15 years, Deborah Donnell, I knew she'd been out. We knew that her daughter was pregnant. What we did not know is the doctor early on in the pregnancy had said, baby will not survive to term. If some chance the baby does survive to term, the baby's going to be stillborn. If the baby's not stillborn, the baby's going to die almost immediately. Nothing can be done congenital to defect. We did not know that. So that week, I'm getting better at telling this story. We'll see. Sometimes I have water and sand in my eyes. She stands and she says, I'm grateful my grandson was born last week and he lived an hour. And his mother and father and I and my husband and the other grandparents got to meet him and hold him and tell him that we loved him. And so I thought I was teaching my team about gratitude, and trust me, that's been 4 years ago. I'm still not there. But I think gratitude is a huge piece of your sales success. Okay, if you want to be able to take rejection, and in sales you're going to take some rejection. People are going to say no, and sometimes people are going to say hell no. Okay, and you gotta not want to give them the one finger salute because they cut you off on the highway. You got to say, I'm grateful because I know the next one might say yes. So if we could go. Thanks, Emily. So we're going to move that needle one more time. Lita hates when I do this one. So anybody been to Florence, seen the David? It's not like awesome or what? So the easiest way to improve your sales is with yourself and your team. Just be brutally truthful. It is what it is. I mean, we know that in EO. If you see it, say it, right? Okay, we don't always do it, but we know it. Okay, and same thing with your sales, is start at the bottom. So this is who, what, where. I don't think I finished this slide. Let's go past that. And I forgot something today that they were like, hey, you forgot it, come back and get it. I'm like, they'll never know. And they're like, you'll tell them. And I'm like, I will. And so I'll have to come back sometime. I'll bring that one piece. It'll take me 5 minutes and then I'll run off free of charge. So this is, put on your EO hat for a minute and put on and then project to being an SAP. And that reminds me, I got a question. Which of you love your bank? Raise your hand if you love your bank. Are you catching this? If you love your bank. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Which of you hate your bank? Okay, honest man. I got two. One I love, one I'm not so hot on. Okay, so the reason for that is the meeting I had before this meeting was with Brian and Susan, who's the SAP chair, and we talked about how to double your SAP budget, okay, which gives you more money to do cool things. And one of them is a bank. We definitely need a bank. And so if you love your bank, somebody's going to have a conversation with you about, are they a good bank for us to talk about potentially being a sponsor of EO? Because if you love them, other EOers will probably love them too. And where a bank's concerned as an entrepreneur, I think you ought to be on the love side. Just being lukewarm is not that great. Okay, you ought to have somebody you love. So this is what we run SAPs through. Their processes, they start with social events, learning events, forum meetings, and lunch and learns. In Fort Worth, Texas, that's all of the different events that an SAP can go to, okay? And I'm a member and I'm on the regional council, and I'm an SAP, and I'm always doing EO stuff. So we ask them to come to everything, not to sell, not to ask anybody to buy, but to do what? Just to meet, just say hi, okay? And then the easiest thing I've found for an SAP to be able to progress, work through the system is this. Is say, hey, Bill, can I buy you a cup of coffee, lunch, beer, glass of wine? I'm not selling anything. I'd just like to get to know you and your business a little bit. you can have EOers for food, wine, beer. I mean, just telling you, they'll all say yes. Okay, it's easy. Okay, it's like ladies' night for young guys. It's like EO bait. Okay, and so then the SAP, they get to that one-on-one meeting. Okay, and they sit down and they don't sell anything. They just learn about you. And you know the best conversationalists do what? What's the easiest way to be a great conversationalist? Just listen. Yeah, shut up. Let them talk. Okay? And so they do that, and pretty soon Bill's thinking, hey, this Williams, I thought he was an idiot to begin with, but he's not that bad. Okay? And sometime in the future, we have a talk about what happens, and I'm at least in the game. And that's how an SAP gets from investing. Your top SAP invested $15,000 in the success of this chapter, and that's badass. And Susan does a hell of a good job. Okay, excuse my language. But you can have more of those, and you can have more of those in your business. Put the puzzle pieces together. Yeah, we're doing that. Okay, so let's talk about, the actual presentation. So part of it's mindset. Okay, if you're the salesperson, you have to expect to win. Okay, if you have salespeople, they have to expect to win. If they don't expect to win, okay, so like the young guy selling Mercedes, somebody comes on the lot and says, yeah, it's a nice car, I don't think I can afford it. If his attitude is, I know what you mean, he's not going to be a good salesperson. Okay, wrong mindset. Okay, you probably can't fix that. The fix is a salesperson-ectomy and replacement. Okay, get somebody who does not have that attitude. Okay. And I'm a big believer in attitude, but not like Zig Ziglar, and I knew Zig, but Zig believed you set your hair on fire and run around and act enthusiastic and you'll be enthusiastic. And I mean, I get that, but it's just not me. But it's more a perspective. It's how do you see things? And we're going to talk about that. And we'll talk about presentation process and customer journey. Customer journey. How many of you have done a customer journey map? Is a graphical representation of every step your customer takes from the time you meet them to the time they become a customer, and then after they become after they become a customer through their life cycle, okay, until the end. So I got one who's 2, 3, how many? Yeah, okay, good. You guys are sharp. If you haven't, please do so. You can go to, I think it's lucidchart.com. Lucidchart.com. They'll charge you nothing for a while, probably. And they'll give you the tools to where you can draw it out. And you got to draw it out. It's not good enough to do it textually on a Word document. You need to draw it out to where you can see it. And then you need to ask yourself, once you have that customer journey map, you got to ask yourself, am I delivering wow at this step, at this step, at this step, at this step? And you're like, well, man, that's an awful lot of wows. And I'm like, yeah, get with the program. A customer will be forgiving to you for how long? If you have a big savings account build up with them, for a while. If you don't, first misstep, they're gone. And they're not only gone, but they're talking bad about you. Okay? And so you don't want to do that. And then objections and closing. So perspective. Whose perspective in selling, in leadership, whose perspective is important? Yours, not mine. No matter what I think, only matters what you think, okay? And so you want to see things from your prospect's eyes, and let me tell you, that is really hard. You know why? Because you got your eyes. You got your experiences, and your it cracks me up, people who are like, well, that's reality. And I'm like, you realize the human brain really can't even fathom reality? It's like you have a 64K hard drive compared to everything that's in the world. You can perceive a slice of reality, but there's no way you can take in all the data of what is reality. So I want to see things from my customer's point of view, and about the only way to really do that is you got to ask customers, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Do you like this? So I'm spending a ton of money, run 100 ad sets on Facebook. That's hard. That's work, man. 100 ad sets where we're testing this and that and this and that and this and that. And I'm like, maybe I'm just way off base. I'll ask people what they think of when they think of me, I got a totally different answer. They don't think I know anything about sales. They hire me for it. I get big numbers, but that's not what they think of me for. So only from your customer's point of view, and it's really hard, and I'll tell you kind of how to do it here in a little bit. And I don't know what time I started. So I just go forever, okay? Because I don't know what time I started. So here's one thing that'll help. Stop selling and start helping. If you see it from the customer's point of view, you'll view it as help. And if the product, service, or experience that you offer, it should be a phenomenal value above and beyond the dollars that you ask for. And if it's not, you probably need to change your offer. It should be a no-brainer for somebody to want to give you their money. I want what you do. I don't care about these dollars. You think people care about dollars? They don't care about dollars, do they? In this country, ostensibly the wealthiest country in the world, what percentage of households cannot put their hands on $1,000? It's like 65%. Is it because they don't have the wherewithal to have $1,000? No. It's because their dollars mean nothing to them. Product, services, and experiences mean something to them. You just have to be sure you elevate yours to where they're worth more than their money. Here's your old thinking. You ever heard this? No, maybe your salesperson said, hey man, nobody wants to buy. You're like, nobody? Nobody wants to buy. You're like, dang, I'm going to kill myself and close the business and move to China. I just can't do it all right. I can't get it all right. I'm trying, I'm working really hard. I'm trying. I just can't get it right. I can't make people buy. That's the only statement up there that's actually even true. You can't make people buy. You make it easy for people to buy. Amazon, okay? Or you can make it hard for people to buy, affect your results, and always be closing. Even professional salespeople are like, what does that mean? Closing, okay? And I'll tell you that for a long time I felt like closing, if you have to close, I don't think you did your job right. Okay, if you have to do it very often, I think there's other problems. And so hopefully this is going to be new thinking. New thinking, okay? People want, love, and actually need to buy. So what's the psychology of when you get a like and it dings your phone? What happens there? Facebook knows and LinkedIn knows and all of them know that your brain gives you a little hit of dopamine every time that happens, and you get addicted to that. And that's why they do it, okay? Remember, if it's free on the internet, you are the product, okay? Period. I don't care what they say. Don't believe them, okay? People psychologically need to buy, okay? Maybe you've known somebody or at least heard from somebody that was a shopaholic. Okay, so, this woman had 180 Dooney Burke bags. I have a friend, Robert Jackson, that's the kind of custom shirt, you know what I'm talking about? They do them in limited editions, about $300, which is an awful lot for an off-the-shelf shirt to me. But I'm in Las Vegas, I'm at Caesars with him, he walks into the gift shop, he buys 4 more, and I'm like, dude, what? And he's like, when you get 75, they'll make one and put your name on it. I'm like, nah. He's like, yeah. I'm like, how many do you have? 87. Like, dude, what are you doing? Okay. Do you think he's addicted to owning those shirts? No, he's addicted to buying those shirts because you get that little hit of dopamine when you slide your card, when you put that 100 on the counter, when you write the check, okay? And people need to buy. And so that's a big change in thinking and a big change for your salespeople once you understand that if they're still talking to you, you're in the game. When I'm done, when you're talking to me about buying whatever your product, service, or experience is, I'm standing up and walking out. If we're still talking, you are in the game. It's not about doing everything right. It's about avoiding the big mistakes. And so, back when I was a young guy and I would take Susie out on a date, I'd take a shower and wash the car and put on a clean shirt and, put a comb through my hair, okay? But it's not about doing everything right. People are imperfect. And if you make a mistake, you just say, I'm sorry, and you go on, and they will forgive you, okay? I won't tell that. It's not always appropriate. Stop selling and let people buy, okay? Quit trying to sell. Start trying to help them buy. Own your product, service, or experience. And then when it comes to objections, so when people tell you no, do they generally do this? They say, no, because, and they tell you some reason why they shouldn't buy, right? What we call this an objection. So the only thing to do with those is prevent them. Okay, customer journey map, we talked about that. That's for Sally's Lemonade Stand. So your presentation, people think, well, my salesperson gets them on the phone, or they're with them face to face, and they're doing their presentation. But your presentation started a long time before that, okay? It was actually everything that they heard, saw, tasted. And you're like, I don't do anything with food. And I'm like, well, here's what you should. Touch and smelt. It's every sensory reception they had when they dealt with your company. So I have a big pharmaceutical company that sets appointments with independently owned physicians, of which that number is getting a lot smaller. Most of the physicians out there are hospital owned today. Okay, but there's a few left, several 100,000. And so they set appointments for their pharmacy rep to go see the doctor. Well, here's how that normally works. They call the doctor and say, hey, I'm pharmacy rep with Pfizer, okay, and I want to come talk to the doc. And they're like, pharmacy day is Thursday, office staff is 12, bring lunch. And that's like the typical response, because they don't really want to talk to the pharmacy rep. Now that's good for the doctor's office on Thursday for a free lunch. It's not good for the pharmacy company. So the program we put together for them, which they kind of were a little questioning when we first did, is we would call somebody up and we'd say, hey, I want to send a gift box to Dr. Brian. Is he still at this address? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, look for it. It'll be there in a couple days. And then the gift box that we sent did have a small flyer for the pharmaceutical company, but it had this $5 cookie. So is there a bakery in town like where their cupcakes or their cookies are like, God, these are killer. So it's one of those cookies, a $5 cookie. Send the cookie, call back in a couple days and say, I want to talk to Dr. Smith. I mailed the cookie. You know what? You got to wait a little bit, but he comes to the phone, okay? Because he liked the $5 cookie, okay? Now, what's a cookie have to do with selling drugs? Nothing. Okay, except you remembered me, because as the herd was going this way, I was going that way, okay? You want to go the opposite direction. More importantly, are they feeling the romance? Can they tell that you care about them, okay? What's romantic? Lita likes roses. We got like 20 rose bushes, what a pain in the butt, okay? But she likes roses. But roses aren't really romantic. Yes? No? They're really not. Fine wine's not romantic. It's tasty. It's not romantic. It's pretty good if you're at John's house on Friday night with no notice. Soft music, love notes, all that stuff is not romantic. And things that you're doing in your sales process, if you draw out the journey map, you'll look at it and you'll be like, we're not being very romantic. We're being real mechanical. That won't win you customers. What is romantic is this: giving roses, sharing fine wine, listening to music, sending or receiving the love note. Romance always includes an action and generally a surprise. If I tell you I'm going to bring roses, does that have as much effect, guys, as if you just show up with roses? No. You should treat your prospects, customers, and your team the same way. Don't tell them, just act. This is the tough one. So, hack number 3. I started about a year ago, July. I had about 1,000 connections on LinkedIn, and I don't know, 6 people, including John, on Facebook, maybe 7. And I decided I was going to overtake the internet. I haven't got there yet, but I'm still working on it, okay? I now have about 18,000 connections on LinkedIn, and I'm like at 5,000 on Facebook. And I started shooting videos, okay, and posting non-paid posts, just posts, videos. And the reason I did that is because I know this, face-to-face, 3 feet apart, knee to knee, eye to eye, is the most rich form of communication you and I can have. Next would be video conferencing, where we're interacting, okay, then audio only, and then all the tech stuff is behind that. But what do your salespeople want to do? I'm gonna send them an email. You're like, big rip, you think they're reading it? They're not, okay? I mean, who gets 100 emails a day in here? Everybody. Who gets 200? 3? Oh, I'm sorry. That's brutal. So we want to communicate in the richest manner possible. And if you want to see yourself the way other people see you, you can do the survey like I did, okay? Or you can take your cell phone and you can watch yourself behind the lens of the camera. So I'm talking to Lita the other day, and I said something about my brown hair, and she got silent. And I was like, what? She's like, your hair's not brown. I'm like, how rude? How rude of you? Okay? And so I have to go look in the mirror, and I'm like, hell, my hair's not brown. See what, when I look in the mirror, I'm like 25 years old. Now that was 35 years ago, but that's what I see. Okay? Laugh at me if you like. I assure you, you're the same way. You see through your glasses instead of the world's glasses. If you want to see through the world's glasses, you got to do it from a camera. Okay? So let's do that. Get your camera. Put it in video selfie mode. We're all going to shoot a video. It's going to be like a mass healing in an Alabama tent revival. Okay, wrapping it up. She told me, shut up. You got to go. Got to open the bar. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to say, so here's what I would say, and you're going to insert your own name. I'm Don Williams with Don Williams Global. I help people sell more of whatever they sell. Okay, so I insert your name with insert your company name and what do you do. Okay, and don't be nervous. Everybody's going to do it. Get your phones out. 1, 2, 3. I'm Don Williams with Don Williams Global, and I help people sell more of whatever they sell. Okay, so after you've had a couple libations, and you go home tonight, I want you to watch that, and I want you to see if you think you look as good as you thought you looked, okay? And I'm guessing you're not gonna think you looked as good as you look, and so you have room for improvement. And if you wanna see how people see your company, like if you have a retail location, take your phone and walk through your place and then look at it there. It'll be totally different than when you walk through it. You want to hear your salespeople? Record it, okay? And listen to it when you're not doing anything else, and you'll be like, that's crazy. Why did he say that? Emily, move us along. Okay, real quick. There's 3 primary objections. The hardest objection to close is always this: trust. Right? When's the last time somebody said, I'm not buying from you because I don't trust you? Never, but it's the true objection about 80% of the time. Okay? So you want to know how you build trust? Be trustworthy. Yeah. Make promises and keep them. That shocks people. They're not used to people keeping their promises. Make promises and keep them. I'm accelerating us to the bar. Trust is also the almost impossible objection to overcome. You have to prevent it. If it comes up, you're almost always dead. If there's going to be an objection, you bring it up. And your sales presentation ought to include it. So on time, a lot of customers say this, they shouldn't do it right now because of blah, blah, blah. But the real reason is they should do it right now because of blah, blah, blah. And you bring that up before you hear it from them. And same thing on money, okay? Because when you bring it up, it doesn't hurt as bad, and you get a chance to pre-close it. Pros know to bring it up ahead of time. Yeah? If you do have to close, and this is the slide that won the guy the $500,000 deal in Tulsa. If you got an objection, there's nothing you can do about it. You follow these 4 steps, and I'll stop on this. Empathy. So they tell you, yeah, Don, I love it, but I can't buy because of blah, blah, blah. And so you know what my response needs to be? I understand. I get it. That makes sense. I never even thought about that, but 2 people have told me that now. Because when I make statements like that, I'm no longer, well, I never was in an adversarial position, but I'm certainly not now. I'm on the same side of the table with you. I understand. I see it. I get it. And then I'm going to isolate. Once I've done empathy well, I'm going to isolate. And isolate is just this. Is that the only problem? I mean, if it wasn't for that, you'd go ahead. I mean, I know you're not, but if it wasn't for that, you'd go ahead and take it, right? And because I've empathized, right, and we're buddies now, what do you say? Yeah, sure. Okay. And now I got to tell a story. And here's where salespeople, they're like, what do I say? 2 stories. AT&T, back when you had dial tone long distance, they were the largest buyer of telemarketing time in all of history. Okay. When they called up to try and get your long distance, if you said, no, I have MCI and I love them, the person on the phone was required to read rebuttal 1. Okay, these 17 words. And if you said, yeah, but I understand, but I really, really like MCI, they were required to read rebuttal 2, these 24 words. And you said, yeah, but you're not listening to me. I really, really like MCI. And they were required to read rebuttal 3, these 28 words. Now, the words in rebuttal 1, 2, and 3 never changed. So if you said, I really like MCI, they read rebuttal 1. If you said, I would take AT&T, but I have a purple hippopotamus eating my petunias, they would read rebuttal 1. And you would say, you're not hearing me. There is a purple hippopotamus eating my pink petunias. And they would read rebuttal 2. Okay? And they sold billions and billions and billions of dollars of telephone service. So keep that in mind. Second story. I'm not sure which university psychology department. They got 6 people in line at a FedEx Kinko's at the copier. Somebody like me walks in. I don't get in the back of the line. I walk right up to the front of the line. And what's everybody say? Hey, what are you doing? Get to the back. You're cutting. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, and that was the control. Next day, same thing. 6 or 8 people in line. Guy comes in, goes to the front of the line. Same thing happens. Hey, you're cutting. Get in the back. Whatever. He turns and he says the magic words. Remember what the magic words are? I'm sorry. I'm in a hurry. And you know what they do? Oh, it's okay, go ahead. Now, me, I'm like, hey, I'm in a hurry too. He's in a hurry. You're in a hurry. We're all in a hurry. It doesn't matter much what you say at this stage, whether you talk about purple hippopotamuses eating pink petunias or I'm in a hurry. You just have to say something. Okay? Don't go silent. Okay? And then you just ask for the sale. So you'd go ahead, right? So you'd like it on the 1st or the 15th. You want an invoice, you want to pay cash, whatever. Okay, zoom. Talk books later. Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here today, and I'm getting out of the way between you and the bar. Thanks.